This meeting and all other meetings of this council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. We'll start with roll call.
Rasmussen,
Here,
Gunderson,
Here.
Appleby.
Here.
our second item is to approve the minutes from the Special Finance Committee meeting on December 15th of 2014 and the regular committee meeting on January 5th of 2015. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Special Finance Committee meeting on December 15th, 2014, and the regular committee meeting on January 5th, 2015.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Our third item, citizen appearances.
I believe they are both here for items number 4 and number 5.
I see 3. Be like
Number
an,
6.
be like an all, wouldn't it?
And number 6. No, we're good.
Okay.
So if you want to take them up
Okay.
during each item.
All right, then what we'll do is we'll start with item number 4, and that is the discussion on the city assessment reevaluation with Mr. Mark Brown from Associated Appraisal Consultants. You have the
Yes.
floor.
Perfect. Couple handouts for you here.
Oh, please, I can't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm not sure how much Patrick's prepped you or kind of where you're at with things, but basically the city is looking at needing to do a revaluation by either this year or next year at the latest. Wisconsin Department of Revenue requires that each municipality keep their assessments within 10% of their equalized value or the 100% value of the community at least once in a 5-year period. So the first sheet there is kind of an overview of the compliance that the city has fallen under in the last few years. So you can see the 2013 year you received a non-compliance notice from the Department of Revenue. So they sent a letter to the community saying that that was your 4th year that the assessments differed by that 10%. Last year was a training notice year. 2015 will be considered what's called a training year. And then next year would be 2016. If you don't get into compliance by that time, the Department of Revenue considers it to be a reassessment or a need for a reassessment, not a revaluation. Basically, the Department of Revenue says, we're going to send out bids for assessment firms to do the work. We're going to charge probably, it's going to be triple the fee, and then you pay the Department of Revenue oversight as well. So it's quite a bit more costly, so you never want to get into that situation. The next page is a flow chart just kind of showing that same graph. So 2016 would be the last possible date that you'd want to be doing some kind of an adjustment. How you got there? Well, the last revaluation we did was back in 2008, so you're looking at almost 8 years since the last revaluation. Of course, the market's changed quite a bit since then. Right now, assessments are at about 111%, meaning that they're about 11% higher than what the sales are showing. And of course, that changes year to year depending on how the market is. In the interim, since 2008, we haven't been doing any adjustments to assessments for market conditions. We've only been doing maintenance work or new construction, remodels, all that sort of thing. And we're running ratio studies to determine where we're at as a community. So typically cities, villages, usually on a 6 to 8 year cycle for revaluations. I think that's been pretty typical here as well. So you're right in line with the next revaluation type thing. So one of the other pages there I put together was sales from the last 5 years. You can see the 2011, the median was about 106%. Then it went to 117% in 2012, 118 in 2013. Dropped back down again to about 110 in 14, which was last year. And the sales that we've taken a look at so far this year, we're looking at a median of about 106. So you can see there's been some fluctuations. I was telling Patrick that, with this assessment law, you're required to keep it in 10%. The 2015 assessment year, you may actually come back into compliance because the ratios have been trending back closer to 100% again. Department of Revenue, when they adjust their equalized value, may adjust it just enough that you may come back into compliance, and once that happens, the clock begins over again. So now you're not in the non-compliance year, you're starting again, and you have another 5 years again. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Well, market trends will indicate that though, right?
Market
The further we
trends will
get into the
indicate
new
that.
year.
Correct, yeah. So right now, we're into the 2015 assessment year. So properties as of January 1st of 2015. So we're looking at the sales that took place in calendar year 14, which is what that 15 ratio study shows, as to where we're expecting the DOR to adjust their equalized value. If they were to add, if you go back to the first sheet, if they were to add 1.5% to their equalized value, suggesting that assessments are coming back closer to the sales, you would come in residential, you'd come under that 110% threshold. Your next major class that has to come in is commercial, and they're at 110.65, so you're pretty darn close there as well. Department of Revenue took 2% off for this year, and they didn't do anything with the residential class. If they do the same thing again, you're still going to be out in your residential. So
You're saying 2% off of the commercial equalized value?
right now, if you look at the top page there, right now, commercial as a class is 110.65%. So
Yeah.
we're 10.65% higher than what the DOR feels we should be.
Okay.
So if they increase their
Oh,
equalized,
okay, I got you.
then you'll end up coming
From the
in
year
at
before.
109, right?
Yep.
And so that's where the economic trends come into play, because the DOR has to mirror the economics to somewhat on their values as well. So
Mhm.
if we don't do anything and they adjust, we might come back in. So, well, what do we do about this? Well, we have different options. This colored sheet here is what the Department of Revenue kind of calls the different scopes of work or annual assessment stuff that assessors can do to maintain assessments at different levels. The first one in being a full revaluation, that of course is walking through every home, gathering all the data, revaluing everything again. The next phase is the exterior revaluation. That's typically where we're just going out, verifying the records from the road, updating photos, checking sketches, doing walkthrough as needed for any requests or all that kind of stuff. An interim market is more a desk review, so to speak, statistical analysis, reanalyzing the sales, re-updating our model for all the non-sale properties, and again, bringing in the assessments back to where the sales are showing. And then the last one is just the typical annual maintenance review, which is what we're currently on right now. So they usually recommend that if you haven't done a revaluation for more than 10 years, full revaluation certainly is your one you want to choose first. Exterior, if your records are 6 to 9 years old since the last, that's kind of us in that standpoint. And then an interim market is past 5 years. If you've done a revaluation, well, then you can get away with a kind of a market update or an interim market bump. So I had told Patrick that, I would think you're kind of in that exterior to interim market arena right now. Your records and your pictures are about 8 years old, and it really depends on what the city chooses to do. We're fine with doing an interim market update, doing typical permit work, maintenance work, and then also analyzing the sales and updating all the assessments to get you back in compliance again. Or we can certainly do the other two options, which is exterior or full. It's a matter of what you end up wanting to have. So.
Just for a little bit of background about,
Yep.
for the first letter that we received from the state would have been about November 2013. And Shani, I know a year ago you hadn't been on the council, but when we got that letter, we had talked with Associated a little bit at the time, and they said, well, here's what the letter means, and Mark went through that a little bit. Our big concern, of course, would be you do not want to get to the point where the state orders you to do it, because as Mr. Brown said, you get 3 times the costs. About a year ago, we didn't get the mandate to do a full revaluation, but I think at the time, that was before video on these meetings, so it's hard to go back and check out the replay, but there was a little bit of a sense of, well, if we're going to do any kind of revaluation, maybe we should just do the full revaluation. And I don't remember anything really more than that about a year ago, but what we did do is we learned after the fact that you know, maybe you didn't need to get a full revaluation yet. And maybe you didn't need to get a revaluation at all back then. We did collect quotes on full revaluations, but in talking with Mr. Brown, it sounds like maybe right now you don't have to do a full revaluation, and you may not have to do a full revaluation anyway. And when it comes to full revaluation, those quotes we got were between $25,000 and $40,000. So it's kind of a significant expense to take on, and especially if you don't have to do it. One of the questions I have for you is, so we've got some projected numbers for this year. Do you know about at what point those may become more clear on whether or not we'll be in compliance?
Every year, the Department of Revenue is statutorily mandated to release their equalized value, the 100%, by August 15th. So I don't know what they're gonna come up with until then. Right now, we're in the process of doing our sales analysis for them. That's due February 13th, so we'll have all of our sales analyzed. They released the preliminary ratio studies by the end of February. So at that point, I'll have a good idea of maybe what economic adjustment they might make. What they end up making, well, that could differ. Small municipality, so you have sales that are usually under 15%. 15 sales usually is considered significant for ratio studies. So you kind of fall under that threshold, so you kind of get grouped with other similar villages and whatnot within the county or within the area. And your ratio is kind of a blend of those other types of communities. So our ratio could show, hey, we're changing by 3%, but they may say, well, because of the blend group, you're only going to change 2%. And so you won't know for certain until August 15th as to what you come in at.
So if that's the case then, and if we find out that we're not into compliance in mid-August, end of August, do we have enough time to carry out, I guess the more labor intensive would be the full revaluation, but do we have time from August or September to get into compliance by?
Well, sure, yeah, I mean, for 15 assessment year, we're just getting into it, so that's not a problem. We can have you in compliance before the August 15th deadline. If you want to wait, because you don't want to do a revaluation and see if you come into statistics, 16 would be your last year. And if you don't come in that year, then it gets ordered. So, like I said before, because it's not just us as the assessor adjusting assessments, we do it in 16, we bring it into what we think is the 100%, and then the DOR goes and adjusts it by 5 or 6, and then you don't come in. Now, we got a pretty good, 10% is a pretty good window to try to be within, and I would say we're gonna come into that, but it's the last year. If you don't, then it gets ordered, whether it's a reval or not. So you really never wanna stay into the last year. There's
So
just
what's
a lot
the,
of
what's
risk,
the
so.
time frame wise, when's the last date that we have to decide to pull the trigger?
Probably depends a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Every year, we're required to have board review by the second Monday of May or 30 days thereafter. If you don't, you adjourn to a later date. We certainly could push it off until after August and say, oh, let's see what it comes in at after August, or if we look at these sales ratio studies that come out, we could say, okay, we're not in compliance again this year. This is our 6th year out. Next year, they're gonna reorder one if we don't get it in. Let's do the interim market. So then we adjust the assessments in August, September, we have a board review, open book, September timeframe. You could do that as well.
We could do any of these in.
Full
in-
revaluation, then you're looking at a little more time.
It takes more time, but I'm
Yeah.
saying if we did the exterior one,
Yeah.
we could get by with just doing that and bringing ourselves into
Absolutely,
compliance.
yep. And we could have open book and board in August, September, you'd be in compliance.
I think that's what we're looking for, is to fall into line with compliancy, correct?
That's the goal,
Well,
yeah.
then,
And really, that's a really good option for you, because we did already a revaluation fairly some time ago. We have all the records already. Now it'd be a matter of just driving around, verifying them from the road, updating the digital pictures of them, checking properties that need to be checked out, and things like that. It's less costly than walking through every single home, but your records aren't that old, so.
so as long as we're involved in the process by, say, August 15th, somewhere in there, am I correct?
Yeah,
As long as we're involved in that, it doesn't have to be completely done, or can you do it at such a pace that it would be done by the beginning of the new year?
January 1st is the effective assessment date, so
Okay.
we can have board review in December.
Okay.
If you had to. You don't want to because it messes with budgets and stuff, but
Yeah.
you can have board review anytime this calendar year up till January 1st. preferably December timeframe, and we can get you in compliance before that. Either one of the options. So, if it's going to be a full, walkthrough reval, well, I'd like to know a little bit sooner than later.
Sure.
If it's an exterior only, that doesn't take as long. So, but certainly we can get them any done before August, September timeframe.
No, I'm already leaning towards a curb evaluation right now.
Sure. One of the other questions I think that came up at the council meeting in, was it December, was, and I think you touched a little bit on it, but being out of compliance, and then when it talks about a training year, now it sounds like it's sending you to school then?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
what that is? And
Department of Revenue requires the assessor to maintain certification. There's certain requirements, one of them being to attend the annual assessor school. So they hold one every year. We have to be at 4 out of 5 to maintain our certification. That's really all it means, is we have to attend that school this year.
sure.
And you would be going anyway, probably.
We go every year. So it's not additional training or anything like that. It's just putting on notice basically that, hey, your community is out of compliance. You need to attend some training to be able to handle doing a revaluation or getting them back into compliance.
Really, that'd be
Here's
for a
the-
smaller service than yourself.
Yeah,
Because you have enough people, enough communities, you're probably always.
Right. Yeah, it's been on the books for a lot of years, so it hasn't changed that requirement. But it's statutory, so it takes a lot to get it changed.
Sure.
Okay. So this is really something we could hold until the summer when we got a better feel for what's going on, right? Especially if we're leaning towards an exterior one.
I think so. You mentioned something about the exterior being not as intensive as the full. Do you have an idea of how many months maybe, or how?
But it all depends, because it's exterior only, we're gonna want some nice pictures, so hopefully not snow on the ground, so
In the summer.
wait a month or so,
Sure.
get late spring and get out there, and probably field work wise, maybe a month or so.
Sure.
Yeah, we can get you a timeline, with whatever you choose, so.
Okay.
So right now, we're contract do maintenance, so we're gonna be out doing permits and all that kind of stuff, irregardless of whatever option you choose the other way. And then, if it's an exterior, well, then we can come out and take pictures and verify the rest of the parcel. So.
Okay.
Good. Anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Brown?
Do we need to decide at this point in time or make a recommendation as to which way we would like to go with this at this meeting?
This is just a
Is
discussion.
this an
right?
informative?
I would say this is more of a discussion at this meeting here, and we've got, you meet every month, we can bring it up as needed. One of the things that we did talk about was that we record this so that the other members of the city council, if this doesn't come out of committee at all, they'll at least have a record that they can go back and watch.
Okay, real good.
If they've got any other questions too, and that's just for the record too, Mr. Brown said that he's more than willing to answer any other questions that anybody else
I
has.
can come
so.
back and then we can pay after or something like that, so.
Sure.
Okay.
Very
Being
good.
that it's so close to getting a reassessment, you really wanna make a good decision on what route
Yeah.
to
Right.
take, so.
Yep, yep. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
I have nothing else. Thank you, Mark.
Very good.
Appreciate
Very
it very much.
Very
Any
good.
questions,
Thank you.
let me know.
Sounds good.
We'll talk soon.
Good.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next item for discussion is the discussion and possible action on fire and ice contribution.
This was referred, Mr. Bayman is here, he was at the council meeting, explained the event, also explained the contribution from the city. That's been, like, how many years now has it been? It's been every year I've been here, but that's,
7 years? No, excuse me. Yeah, 7 years. So it's almost $70,000 we've created, $10,000 basically every year that we've been able to get back to these youth groups. But yeah, so since 2008 basically, we've run full go. Now I don't know, they used to be part of the fire department when they did it as well, so it's basically been an ongoing thing for quite a while,
I'm trying to think here off the top of my head.
What you trying to think of?
actual dollar amount was from last year?
700.
Okay.
700
I
is
was thinking 800, but it's.
no, it was
700 or
700,
800.
you know, and I would be more than comfortable in donating another $700 this year.
Me too.
So I guess that maybe that's just a motion. Yeah, that was a motion for 700.
And I'll second that.
Recommend contributing?
Sure.
Contribution. Okay,
And all in favor?
Aye.
motion carries.
We thought we'd cut you off with your
No, that's
short
fine.
explanation.
That's fine.
Thank you guys, I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. You know, you have no idea how
No,
much it helps, so.
you do a lot for the
You
city.
do a lot
in
for the youth in our
yes,
community, and that's very
the
important.
service groups,
Yep.
so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you as well. All right, moving on. Discussion and possible action on the Lake Association support request.
Yes, you have you're able to take a look at the letter, and then there's a packet of information in your packet.
Mhm.
Let me pull it up here too. The Lake Association had forwarded that to me, and it looks like, I'm trying to think of the year off the top of my head. It's been a busy week here, but it was from the prior administrator had been here, so
2010.
2010. I was gonna say
Yeah.
about 3-4 years.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. There was a request that was submitted to the federal government for funding with the lake. And with that, there was also a letter of support from the city. And they had requested that, Holly Martin had actually sent it to me and asked if the city would be interested in renewing that support. Beyond that, I'm not sure that the city had put that together, that request, or if the city had just assisted with the request. But it sounds like there is a effort from the Lake Association to submit for funding from the federal government. So at this point,
Oh,
that's what I have. I do know that there's been an update, and they are working with Attorney Worth on the Lake District creation.
okay.
And I believe, as you'll remember, Attorney Kelly had mentioned that there's scenarios
Mhm.
where both groups will be in play or could be in place, even if the Lake District gets created, so.
I think the letter of support is fine. I think we should do it. Although before we sign on anything, there's some businesses that they say have had interest that I would like you to find verification of that they actually are interested, because I've never heard of these businesses.
Okay.
I don't want us to, no, if they're not there, we shouldn't be saying they are. You know,
Okay.
you know, I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm going back on what I said about the city not putting out monies until they get a lake district, because those people on the lake have to buy into this. But I think it's also unrealistic to think that even if they form a lake district, they're not going to be able to do it on their own. So we are going to have to help them, because it does add something to the city. But the lake district the homeowners have to buy in it and contribute to this. You know, I go out there now and I see homeowners dumping grass in the lake, and as long as they're going to keep dumping grass in there, they're going to defeat their own purpose. So.
Yep.
But
What specifically does this letter of support on behalf of the city state? Because I'm not seeing it.
it's down in the bottom. Cheryl did it.
Yeah, and that's, so there isn't a proposed letter of support, it's a review of when they ask for the same thing you did last time. This is, and in your packet is what you did last time.
Right? It's way down there past the other businesses.
Yeah, yeah, and there are packet in the packet, there's other businesses that have letters in there too, other organizations
Mm-hmm.
that support the time.
Right.
So this is nothing more than a show of support.
Show of support,
on,
yes.
on paper.
Correct.
They're not asking for financial support, they're just asking for a generalized,
I think there's going to
Support.
be a request for financial support. Now with that,
okay, I found it, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is.
and I'm pulling it up here too, it's kind of under here.
You know, it just says that we would like to extend support to the efforts and grant requests for the Weyauwega Lake Restoration Project. So this is not dollars per se. This is just saying that we support their efforts. Which more than likely includes dollars per se.
Yeah, so in a way, now this letter from February 5th, 2010 says support to the efforts and the grant request. So one of the things that we might look at is probably drafting a letter. The reason it's before you is the request came in, you know, to help or endorse
Right.
or offer your support. You don't have a letter in front of you, but if you are on board with drafting one, that would be good, because if it's a letter
Right.
just to support, and then there is a grant request that comes in, you'd want to
Right.
probably redraft or redrop your letter
Right.
anyway.
Right.
So,
And I guess that was my thought anyways, that we would, like I said, check into the stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, and draft a new letter of support and probably bring it back for next month's meeting and
we can do that. So you'd like a draft letter of support brought back to you in
Yeah.
March? We can do that.
Could we also find out how much money we've also given this cause to date?
To the
Well-
cause or to the organization? 'Cause it might be two different numbers. We'll probably try to get both.
Yeah, because it will all add up into a significant dollar amount, and I think that our past practice has done more than show support. And that you might wanna reflect that in this letter, as to how much money we have put forth to the cause and to the organization thus far, as a show of good faith.
Yeah, it can be included in the letter too.
right,
I think it would be
should be.
a good
Yeah.
idea.
Okay?
So basically, our decision here is to have a revised draft of a new letter of support, correct?
Yeah, we can do that. Bring that back in March with those items that you mentioned.
Do you need a motion to do that?
No, we can just
Just
put
a
it as.
directive.
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
and we'll bring it back in March.
Okay. Bear with me a moment.
Yeah, no problem.
The next item is discussion and possible action on city logo clothing.
So here's two handouts for you. The top one is the polo shirts. I got one extra. Grab it, it's up to you.
I'll follow along.
Sure. The top one is the polo shirts that we looked at last month. And then it's got the price, it's the bottom one on the third sheet on the top packet. Red and or black polos, $21, sizes up to an XL, 24, 27 for X, double X and 3X. What we did gather, which is I believe what you asked at the last meeting, was to take a look at long sleeve shirts. And basically if you look at the model number from the polos, K500, you have on the first sheet K500 LS, which of course means long sleeve. Look at the pricing, 21 to 27 for the polo shirts, the quote from Dockside Designs for the Silk Touch long sleeve polo, $40. And then on the second page, there's a long sleeve knit polo, which is $43.
What about a dress shirt like this?
That we didn't get a quoted price on. We did. There are some of those that are there, but we didn't get a price on them.
This is Port Authority shirt.
Yep, yep. And I don't believe this one on the right. I don't think
No, that's just the
that's a
one.
Port Authority long sleeve.
Yeah.
but we do have the full catalog, so if there's anything else we could take a look into, we could do that. She can get us a price back. We asked a little bit about the potential for bulk pricing, and she had said that it probably wouldn't apply. That we might
For what, the monogramming or the
bulk
shirts themselves?
in shirts them in the whole package. We could probably
Oh, yeah.
get maybe $1 off a shirt, but bulk to us is probably not going to be bulk to her. I mean, with Fire and Ice, you guys buy quite a bit of shirts. I'm sure that would be considered bulk. On our end, we're looking at maybe 20 people buying a shirt or two a piece. So, but the one thing that we didn't get is we did not go out and get a full shopping list from council and staff on would you want one shirt, would you want two, would you want red or black or long or short. We haven't completed that yet. We started it in the office, but the main question here then would be if the long sleeve shirts are looking to be for a basic shirt $40 to $43, is it something that we're still you wanted to include or consider?
That's expensive.
I would
I'll tell
rather
you right
have a
now,
dress
it's
shirt
expensive.
because that's what I would be buying anyway, be dress shirts
Okay,
and not a long sleeve polo.
sure.
If the girls in the office wanted to wear long sleeves underneath this polo shirt, then they could just wear any long sleeve t-shirt that they wanted to buy, a white one or black one, or I don't care what, I'm not gonna. I think that's a more cost effective way to go, personally.
Who's this vendor? This is,
Well, it goes through Dockside Designs, but it's Port Authority. If you look on the upper left-hand corner there, it is Port Authority.
remember that business card I gave you?
Yes.
You need to call that guy.
Yeah.
I think
we
it would
can
be
take a look
worth
at
your
that.
while. It's the same thing, and it's a heck
Sure.
of a lot cheaper than this.
And Brandon had brought up another website as well too.
Okay.
But when we were at the committee, though, one of the topics was go with Dockside because she's local. So I've got no problem calling anybody else, or maybe even going.
It did come
I'm
out.
saying your out-of-pocket expense for the shirts themselves will be cheaper.
Oh, to buy if okay.
Yes, because we've been doing that with the other extended part of our business too, is buying shirts and then taking them to her and having them embroider them. The main
Sure.
cost, the big cost up front was the program to make the initial
Sure.
template or the computer program.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's the same
Okay.
price across the board per shirt.
So the question I have with that then is, and this sounds probably really odd, but what would be the goal of this program then, or why are we talking about this then? Is it, I know that we're going to have, the city is probably going to purchase a shirt or some shirts, and then employees can probably purchase their own shirts too.
Mhm.
And so if we look at somebody that might not be Dockside Designs, it might be cheaper. Are we having the employees buy from that company, or are we having the city buy from that company, or are we, you know what I mean? I guess I'd like a little bit, maybe just to clarify the direction on, should we have the whole program shipped out somewhere?
Your embroidery should be held here in town.
Okay,
All right.
so you're thinking just to buy the shirts
And then
from someone
have
else
her-
and then get, okay, cause
Yes,
that's,
yes.
okay. Cause when we got the prices,
She's
The
paying
prices
for the
we got-
shirt and everything up front, and then her little bit of markup margin and this.
yeah, and the prices we got were based on just the vendors getting the shirts themselves. So one thing we didn't look at was,
Okay.
can you buy them somewhere else and then bring them to her for embroidery? That we could do.
She does that.
Yeah,
So,
oh yeah, but we didn't get a quote on that though. So I can.
I think you would be more pleasantly surprised at the cost
Sure.
on that.
Well,
than-
Yeah, I'm sure I probably would be, because I believe out of the three that we talked about that were somewhat local, she was the lowest, or at least, well, they were actually all close, I think, but she was on her setup fees a little bit lower.
Mhm.
But there's a couple other places that you could probably get a cheaper shirt from, and like I said, the one thing we didn't do was, when we asked for quotes locally, it was,
The
we
whole
wanna go
thing.
from no shirts to, we wanna get the shirts and they're completed. And
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we were looking at the whole package.
Yeah, yeah. So I can definitely split that off. Take a look at what we could get for shirts.
Well,
Because the catalog we have is just from Dockside, so it's just
Yep.
her products that she gets and then delivers to us when they're finished.
why don't you do that? And I would say
Yeah,
this polo shirt and then a button down
sure.
long sleeve shirt.
Okay,
Just a dress shirt, just like that.
we can do that. That's no problem. Anything else on that at all?
No, you okay with that?
Oh yeah, no, that's great. That's great. That helps. That helps. Okay.
All right, our next item is discussion on the City Hall technology and IT upgrades.
There's quite a bit that we need to do. You know, when it says City Hall technology and IT upgrades, the City Hall project has been out there, and if it keeps going in the manner that it's going, where you're finishing design and then potentially moving forward in construction fairly soon, there's a lot in technology and IT that you just need to put into a new building. But even if you weren't looking at the City Hall project, there's a lot of stuff that's, I'll just say, failing at City Hall, and it's the servers, remote access. We're working on these things. We've been working with Heartland as our current IT contractor on what do we have, what are we supposed to have when it works, you know, what is it supposed to be like? How do we move to a new building? And even if we don't move to the new building, how do we at least get up and running with stuff that works? And we've had ongoing meetings with them. We've also gotten very, 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 very rough budget figures, not quotes yet, but budget figures on what it would take to upgrade what we have, and then what it may take to build out the City Hall building. And I'll say it's a lot, but for right now, I can tell you that we are working on upgrades to our servers, which is the big one. Now, some of the options we have there are, we could just buy a brand new server, put it in our building, and if we move out for the construction, we could go move that server with us. We could rent server space from a company like Heartland or somebody else like that, where we're just renting their space. Or one of the other options is we could buy our new server and they could build it and host it at their site. We could rent it and then they could maintain it until we're ready to move into a new building. So we've got
Are you just looking for more electronic storage? Basically.
more storage, but then also like our remote login right now.
Mhm.
Our email works most of the time, so all of our cell phones are hooked through our remote login. So I get my email on my phone, but it's because it's hitting the server. Now that works most of the time. What doesn't work is from maybe my home computer or a computer outside of the office. I'm supposed to be able to remote into the server and be able to see documents and check things, like if I'm out sick or home or whatever it is. But that just doesn't work at all. So there's a lot of stuff that's just old, and our server is actually getting discontinued. It's the 2003, but it's getting discontinued for everybody though. So I mean, probably, being that it's 10, 11, 12 years old, probably the time to be looking into upgrading, especially that we're filming and recording meetings. We need a ton of space, and we've bought
Okay.
a couple Band-Aid fixes or minor fixes, terabyte hard drives that'll get us by. But the big story is we're meeting with Heartland not because we're playing favorites with vendors at all, but in a way we sort of are, in the way that they know exactly what we have now. And to bring 2, 3, 4, 5 vendors in and then try to get them on board with where we're at in this process would be, we just don't have time for that, I guess. We did get a couple quotes for the phone system, and we did upgrade the phone system now. in working with Heartland, at least they knew our setup and what we had already, because our phone system, we went from just a conventional old phone that you just plug in the wall to a more advanced phone system that's over our server. It's an IP phone. When the other company came in and tried to get an idea of what we needed and where we were at, it took 3-4 times as long as probably it should have. So, just like this discussion probably is here, but the big thing for now is there's a lot that we're looking at. There's a lot that we just need to fix in general. And we've had meetings up until last week. I had a couple meetings with Heartland. Tomorrow I've got another meeting with Heartland, just going over what we all have and what we probably need.
Have they given you any numbers yet?
Rough
you?
numbers, but the numbers that they've given have been, I would look at it, it's not a quote, but it's more like a shopping list of things that you might need or might
That's
want.
what I was gonna ask you, are they giving you an inventory of
Yeah.
things that they're looking at?
Yeah, and that leads into my next comment here. Now, I think you guys are aware that Brandon, myself, Jerry, Thad, we all went to the village of Little Chute, and we looked at a building that they're putting on that's very close to the concept that we're doing right now. One of the comments I wanted to make, and I'll give you one of these. We have their RFPs that Little Chute put out. Heartland had written them for them, and this is just for door security and video surveillance. Now, Heartland had done 4 RFPs for them. There was security, cabling, phone system, and then a village board room or like a city council room like what we would have. Now, part of the reason why Heartland did what they needed here was, if you look at the first page, Little Chute put this out on November 7th, and they collected all these proposals like 6 days later. They needed them really quick, and it was because it was the last minute deal. We have a little bit more time. We've been talking with Heartland a little bit longer on what we have. But if you look into, just through this is a 4-page proposal, and the reason why we're gonna go through it is because we're gonna end up having to do this for the City Hall project to collect quotes. But on the first page is just a real general, hey, we're collecting quotes. The second page, it just talks about, it's a lot of the disclaimers, and then instructions on what do we need, what's the format, what's it supposed to look like when it comes in. And then when you look at the third page, Little Chute didn't go out and say, hey, we just want a security system with cameras and door locks. They had actually had Heartland sort of build out a system or provide something of a system, and you know that that's what they did because when you look at the bottom half of the page, it's showing you parts and models and model
Right.
numbers on all of the pieces to a system. So if you get network cameras and you have the model number there, well, you know that that's part of, it's not vague,
Right.
and it's not very, I guess, open. But one of the things that Little Chute did do was they sort of had put out an addendum to this and said, or equivalent is one of the things that they threw on there. So then when people were bidding on it, they knew that, yes, this was part of some kind of a plan, but we'd also like to take other proposals. The first time I saw this from Little Chute, I wasn't really pumped about it because it looks like you already have a system, you're quoting that system out dollar for dollar, and if any company can offer you this exact system, you'd almost wonder maybe they won't bid on it at all.
Well, this looks like it was custom built.
Right.
It's like Little Chute knew what they wanted, but they didn't know what they needed.
Right, and I think they did some review, and again, it was pretty rushed, but the pieces themselves, or the components themselves, in all of the proposals that went out from Little Chute, they were all built just like this, where it gave model numbers.
They're exact.
And the superhero and the transparent guy in me wants to say, maybe when we do these proposals, we should just say, well, we just want a security system, and that's it.
And let them
But-
put together their best offer.
And that's probably a very good way to go, or I don't want to say the best way to go, but it sounds like the best way to go. But the more and more I started looking at all of the different components that are going into a new building. Part of the problem that Little Chute had was, well, they needed a new server, and they needed their door locks to agree with that server, and they needed their cabling. Cabling's a little bit not so reliant on what else you put in there, but you just want to make sure you've got high-end cable and not cheap stuff. And then a phone system has to be able to use your cabling and your server too. So they're all sort of connected. And by just putting out, hey, we want a security system, or hey, we want some cable, I'm almost wondering, how much work is there going to be on the back end to try to sift through, hey, is this stuff really going to work? Or is this really what we need? And one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys was, and maybe not this month, but maybe in the next couple weeks, is what would be your preference as we try to put out these proposals? Do you want to get as many proposals as you can, or do you want to add a layer of, is this going to work with the other components that we're looking to get?
Well,
You can build this in stages, can't you? If you're gonna go with a new server and upgrade what you're currently fighting now, yeah, I would think this process could be segmented over several different time periods to keep adding to, as long as all the components are compatible with one another. Wouldn't that be the way you would want to go to eliminate out-of-pocket expense so much up front?
I think
At
so,
one
but
time?
part of the, I don't want to call it a problem, one of the things to consider is, we're in February, and we're not down to like a week like Little Chute had, or Little Chute brought Heartland in the day before they were finishing up the construction. But when you look at the timeline for City Hall, we were talking about getting design done by like the end of March and bidding out like in April. And one of the things we can do when we're bidding this out, and one of the things Cedar has done, is they've just set aside like an allowance for IT equipment, and they want to tell whoever the construction general contractor is, they want to tell them, we'll procure the equipment on the outside, you just need to have your plans in place for cabling and making sure everything's going to work.
To accommodate it, sure.
We probably have a little bit of time to put this in stages with the City Hall components, but
But what about
we
the
may only
stuff you
have a
need
couple
now?
months.
But what about
That,
what you need
and that
now?
stuff we're looking at, like the phone system, that we just did and got it out. I don't want to say got it out of the way, but we addressed it at the same time. We do have a couple other projects or a couple other topics we're talking about with Heartland, and it's not so much related to the new building as it is, what do we need now? And if we get picked up and moved out of the building, what do we need then, and how is it going to work until we get back into our building?
True.
So that we're still looking at too, and we have a meeting tomorrow with Heartland that's supposed to be like almost like a wrap-up meeting on our discussions on what we need and how we can go about it. But I don't know that I've got a request so much for you, and I got a little bit further than I wanted to get, but it's more just an update that we're working on it. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing.
Well, you basically asked if you wanted us to support going out and getting various bids from different vendors.
And we'd have to, but it would be how detailed would you want this to be or not want this to be, I guess.
well, I feel like if you put it out there and you say, okay, these are the phones we have. Whatever system you build must work with these phones. Okay, so now they know they have to work with these phones that we already bought, right? We're not changing these phones, you have to build with this. We give them the blueprints, right? We say, this is what you build us your security system, right? Knowing that any one of them should be able to also host us when we move out. Anybody that's going to bid on a project this big is going to have the same capability as Heartland has. Okay?
Yep.
The guy across the street at PC, he's not going to bid on this because this is not in his scope. So I think you give him the blueprints, you say, what would you build? Knowing that you have to use this phone, because like you said, they come in, they do the cabling, they do this stuff. I think you can do that.
It'll have to be compatible with the server too, and from
Right.
the
Well,
sounds of it,
we got to buy a new
you know,
server anyway.
Yeah, and
as
that's
far as security goes, I think the police department should be involved in what, in their experience, what they feel would be protective of the environment of City Hall as well.
And I think that anybody bid on it would know that too. They're gonna be companies like Heartland, ABC, and these people that do this for a living. You know, that secure buildings. They're gonna know the key fob stuff. They're gonna, you know, and when we get down into it farther, we can say, okay, we wanna do this in stages if we have to. You know, how do we break this up now? I just think we need to open it up. We can't just go to Heartland and say, okay, you design it, you do this, and
Oh, yeah, and we wouldn't, so I don't, and I think we're all on the same page, John. The reason why they've been involved is because
Right.
they just know what we have.
Right.
And, yeah.
Correct. Correct.
but I think once we finalize our floor plans, we can turn that over to, and say, okay, how would you secure this building? Because there may be other people that come up with things totally different than what Heartland does, because they're just different, you know?
Yep. Okay. Well, again, we've got another meeting with Heartland, and hopefully that's kind of the last,
Okay.
I don't want to call them brainstorming meetings, but it's a lot, there's a lot that's out there, and you'll see probably by next month, one of the targets that we put out there was to try to secure temporary, not housing, but if we've got to move temporarily, where are we going to move to? We're hoping by the end of March that that's all in place. One of the things we've been looking at is the potential for the old middle school. And in talking with staff at the school district, they mentioned, well, probably won't get a firm answer, yes or no, on the middle school until probably the end of March or first week in April. And that's not the worst thing, because right now if we need to move or if we start the construction and it's on schedule, they're looking at the end of May, early June is when they would start construction. So technically, we've been aiming for like May 15th to be out of the building if we need to be.
Have you talked to Leby at all, Steve Leby, about the
Uh,
building?
Very, very briefly, and not within the last 3-4 months about it. So
Okay. So I just know he doesn't have anything in there yet, and that would be on Main Street still. If the school is not gonna work, I mean, that's right next door. It's a big building. It's,
Yep.
you know, for City Hall it would work. Maybe not for the police station, I don't know, but.
yeah,
Sure, we can make anything work temporarily.
That's true too. And it would be big enough for both. If you were gonna do that, that's a big open building with a full basement.
yeah. So again, this item, just discussion, talked a little bit about everything, but the general theme is there's still a lot that's in progress, and we're working on it. So it's just getting, obviously every month now is 1 month closer to when we can make a final decision and have this all taken care of, so,
Good deal.
Okay.
okay.
I noticed that, and I really was looking forward to looking at it, because I got a question about one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
Okay, our
gonna
next,
ask one, you can, go ahead. You have one? Sorry,
our next item
yeah.
is to approve checks 31164 through 31241, totaling $169,385.39, and the monthly financial statements.
And I will tell you real quick, you'll probably want to chop off the financial statements item on there, because I believe the statement that ran off, our software hasn't officially flipped over to 2015 for reporting, because we still have 2014 open yet. And it's not a matter of just clicking the wrong date or clicking the wrong.
Oh, yeah, for the period of last year.
Yeah, so the financial reports you will get, it's just that we're locked out until we completely close 2014.
Okay.
And we're not going to completely close it until the audit's finished in March, so.
Crap.
But do you have a question on that?
Yeah, now I gotta find it again.
Yeah.
Some of it gone.
And
All
if
right.
there's a question, I can pull it up for you and
All
bring
right.
it by the council meeting too, you know?
We spent $148.41 on wiper blades for the tan dump truck. I would hope there was more on that bill than
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, and I'm working with staff on,
I mean, I learned
there's
really,
so there's-
really good
yeah,
wiper blades.
Yeah.
really good ones.
It was a general, the tan dump truck is the one that sits in the park usually through the winter. There's a couple problems with that one. We had an issue a couple weeks ago or a month ago where it just wouldn't turn off. So when we finally got it turned off, the key wouldn't come out of the ignition. So it's, I believe it's about a 25-year-old dump truck, and it's limping along. I think when I first started that winter, it was parked in the park, barely in the parking lot, because that's where it got to before it had died. But yeah, there was definitely more on that. Now, when we cut the checks in our software, there's 2 lines of description, and sometimes only that first line pops up on this report
Right.
here. So, yeah, yeah,
I just read that. I thought, wow.
yeah, yeah.
I could see if it was a squad car, you know.
One of the things
Bulletproof or something.
One of the things I saw when I had gone to the county, the highway committee, the committee sat down and they had almost like, not a picture of each check, but they had a picture with a description on absolutely everything that was on the bills too. And the committee went through every bill, every line by line. Now, typically we have the bills here, but there's a chance we could try to get a better report out there too.
It'd be a lot of scanning.
Well, no, it would just print off. You're saying scanning on your end or scanning on my end?
Yours.
No, it would, well, it might, yeah. Because it'd probably be 4 to 5 times more information than.
Right.
Then we
That's on
need
there.
to know.
Right. But the checks though, the checks aren't that big. I think you only get 2 to 3 pages of checks.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get one list too that when we bring the bills, we could go over that too. But one of the things I've been working on with staff is just looking at like this kind of report, and when we enter in the bills, try to enter in assuming that you're somebody that sits at these meetings and tries to figure out what we're paying for, you know? Sometimes it gets difficult though, and there's a
It
lot
does.
that you do, and especially with this kind of truck, that there's a lot that we do to keep it going too. So.
Would QuickBooks be of any help to you
It-
on that?
it
A
may.
simplistic program such as QuickBooks?
It could. The problem is, when you're looking at our financial software, we do utility billing too. And we need something that, in our billing software, we can kick it over to a reporting tool too. So there's a little
Alright.
bit more than
Alright.
just with QuickBooks. But one of the things we talked about, or Scott, you asked about it last month, was how is the financial software going? And in my administrator's report, that was going to be probably the main topic I was going to talk about. And it's going, but it's lacking, I think. There's a lot that we could do, and I'm going to look at probably shopping out for new software to try to get it in place
think
by
you should.
January 1st. So
I think you should.
not to skip to my report, but yeah.
Right. One less thing for you to talk about.
Yeah.
So is that really all you had to share under the administrators?
Well, when we get there, we're still on the checks yet too. So yeah, we're still in the checks yet though.
Okay.
Is that where we are?
It could be though. It could be.
Cool.
That was my shock look.
Yeah. You know, you get a baby at home and stop home for 5 minutes and then head out the door again.
Okay, so I'll
Yeah,
make a
no.
motion to approve checks number 31167 through 31241 totaling $169,385.39. And I'll stop there.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
That's a roll call.
Roll call. Yep. Rasmussen,
Aye.
Gunderson,
Aye.
Appleby.
Aye.
Now it's your turn.
Yeah, I'll go pretty quick. And then we do have a closed session that
Never heard that
might not go
before.
so quick, but no, the big thing I was just gonna talk about was the financial software, because as we're closing out the year now, it's fine and we can get through it, but the way our financial software is running, there's actually 4 different programs that we have. One is accounts payables, like its own little module, and then there's accounts payable where we pay checks out of, that's its own. Utility billing is its own, and then there's also like a minor cash receipts and a couple other little pieces, but they all you hope that they're all up to snuff and they're all working correctly on their own, because if they're not, or if they are, in the end what they do is they funnel to one central reporting program, and if there's any hitch in any of the smaller programs, your reporting gets really goofed up. And without going any further than that, I can just tell you that it's been a struggle. And before I started, I think the city made the decision to just get this software for free or upgrade for free, because the thought was, and I think the sales pitch was, you'll only have to pay training. And so you probably would only pay half of what your competitors were paying, or charging. Workhorse and a couple others. Great Plains is another one. But what happened was, the city had chose to do this upgrade for free, but then we also had the staff turnover where Katrina came on board, and then I came on board, and then you had the retirement, and usually that free upgrade would work really well if you had continuity with everybody there, and we didn't, so that was one of the other tough things.
Yeah.
The other problem that we have, or I shouldn't say problem, but it's become a problem, is that when we have our auditors come in, our auditors, this is all they do is look through government accounting software and accounting. And we have a fairly decently sized firm, Clifton Larson Allen, and we're the only client that they've ever heard of having this piece of software. And that's kind of a red flag to me too, because
Yeah.
they have a lot of problems. And this is, since I've been here now, this is the second year we're auditing, and there's still some minor behind the scenes things that aren't working real right. But we're trying to get through it, and we're getting through it because we have to, but I think we're relying on our accountants or our auditors to do a little bit more work than they should have to. But definitely we'll take a look at software this year, and I'd like to get it in. I would have liked to have done it last year, but we just got this one done, and there's a little bit of fatigue, I would say. We were hoping we got it all good to go. We found out this year that it's not.
What are you looking at for? You looking at?
Well, there's
like
quite
Sage?
a few. I think what we'll probably do is, as we're looking at this, our auditors are supposed to be independent and take a look at your books independently. But what I've asked them about a little bit is, we're not asking you to tell us what software is bad or good or what we should take or what we shouldn't take. But because this is all they do, I'm sure, and they've told me that they have some thoughts on who is going to
Okay.
really ensure a good transition, and then who's going to back up their product and be really good with maintenance and support.
You could put that on the league too, right?
Oh, you could, definitely.
Get some.
But as part of the audit, when they come and report to you, I'm gonna ask them,
Good.
what other programs have you seen too, and
Okay.
but the goal would be probably take half of this year to transition to a new program, so that January 1st you can roll over and just have your new program and
Right.
close the book on the one we got now. So that was supposed to be quick, and it got a little bit longer, but.
I'd definitely look into it.
Oh, and we
Yes.
are, because it's fatigue is a very good word for.
If we're gonna change it, you might as well just change everything at once. New city hall, new everything, just keep going.
Yeah.
Or as we like to say, upgrade.
Upgrade, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's set the March finance meeting date and time.
I have March 2nd as the first Monday.
Yep,
Okay,
6 o'clock again?
works for me. Shani,
Yep.
okay.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Other matters? Don't have anything right now, other than what we already talked about.
Okay. Then, make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 19.85, Section 1C, Wisconsin statutes, consideration of employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any city employee who is subject to the jurisdiction or authority of the council. The reason for the closed session is to review city administrator goals. The council may choose to reconvene in open session at the completion of the closed session in order to take action on items from the closed session.
And was that a motion by you?
Yes.
I'll second it then.
Okay. I got 7:06.
Okay.
And then roll call vote, Rasmussen,
Aye.
Gunderson,
Aye.
Appleby.
Aye.
All right, we're in closed session then.